Good morning, everyone.
Thank you, Oleg.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I totally agree with all of the points, like recapping yesterday's presentation. Just one more point to add. I think all conferences should have chairs like this. That's a huge value, I believe. Love it. Thank you. So my name is Oleg Luzhnov. I do partner sales enablement at Google Cloud. I'm with Google Cloud 4.5 years, working only with partners. And I'm going to cover the value-driven model we are using at Google Cloud specifically for partner sales enablement. And I will explain why it is slightly different or maybe significantly different from direct sellers enablement, what is unique in there, and how we approach all of the challenges. As an agenda, what are we going to cover today? First of all, again, the definitions, you heard a lot of them over the course of last day or so. But again, if you ask 10 different companies what is sales enablement, you'll probably get 20 different answers, because even within one company, sales enablement is defined differently in many, many cases. Second, what I already mentioned, direct versus indirect or partner sales enablement. That may sound like just two sides of the same medal, but there are many nuances which actually make the whole partner engagement from the enablement standpoint a little bit different, and I'm going to walk you through that. I'm going to cover indirect sales enablement challenges, like what makes it unique, and last but not least, that value-driven model of sales enablement we use for partner enablement at Google, and how it helps to overcome all of the challenges, and actually how we convert them into opportunities for customers, for partners, and for us as a vendor. So let's move on. What is sales enablement? To better understand it, I decided to start with statements what sales enablement is not, which may sound a little bit counterintuitive, but I think you as sales enablement professionals can easily recognize some of the bullet points here. So first of all, sales enablement is not just an onboarding of sales reps, and it is definitely not providing or equipping sales reps with computers and accessories, which always helps, of course. So while onboarding is pretty important, sales enablement goes way beyond of it. It's not a one-off activity to get sales reps back on track, because again, sometimes for some reason, I don't know why, maybe it's a kind of like a old-fashioned approach, sales enablement is considered as just a single activity to make your sellers ready. And it's definitely not an emergency measure. It's proactive rather than reactive process. I would even say that actually fire drills kill sales enablement from my point of view. And fire drill actually the worst enemies of good and effective sales enablement. And it's definitely not to tell sellers what to do. It's rather to nurture real skills for them to build an effective and successful sales strategy with a long-term success. So taking that into account, we defined sales enablement for Google Cloud partners as a proactive process of providing the partner sales organization with all of the information, tools, and content that help partner sellers to work in the most effective way with a view to long-term success. I would probably add a little thing here. It's maybe a couple of little things here. First is it's a right-in-time enablement. And second, actually, the less the better. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more moving forward. But in the modern world, statements like, oh, we delivered 17% more sales enablement assets to our sellers this year versus last year is actually an evidence that probably you are doing something wrong, because the more is not the better in this case. So let's get started, and let's start with direct sales enablement. What are the main characteristics for direct sales enablement? That will help us to better understand what partner sales and how partner sales enablement is different from it. And I grabbed like 4 of the, from my point of view, the most important characteristics of direct sales enablement. And first of them is sales targets. You can clearly define sales targets. You can make them like sales targets for sales divisions. You can make individual quotas for sellers. So that's something what you can completely control, and that helps you also to build the right system of priorities. With setting up targets, you can define your desired product mix, for example. Having accelerators, different accelerators, you can actually drive different product groups or different individual products. So this is something what you can control for your sellers, which is not the case for partners, actually. Second thing, what I call mandatory training. You can require your sellers to complete a set of specific training or learning paths until, I don't know, you can say, you define the learning path and say your sellers that training A, B, and C have to be completed by September 8th. And then you need to have like 3 electives, for example, to complete until October 1st. That's not the case for partners. So there is no such a notion as mandatory training for independent companies with sellers being on their payroll, not on yours. Internal tool sets. That's another important point, because some of the productivity tools, especially tools heavily using data, which is king nowadays, I would say, those tools have internal or sensitive data, which is not okay in all of the cases to share outside. That may include, I don't know, personal identifiable information or sensitive information or just non-shareable information. So you cannot just use those tools blindly and make them available to your partners, because it may include sensitive data in there. And taking into account that you can set up sales targets, and you can directly measure performance. You can do the pretty straightforward progress tracking for your sellers, which is possible. I don't want to say that it is impossible, but let's say more difficult to do on the partner side. Especially, it's difficult to do kind of like a agile or right on time, the back on track planning and execution for sales reps. So those 4 characteristics which makes direct sales force different from partner one. And what is unique? Now let me show you what are the unique challenges of the partner enablement process, or indirect sales enablement challenges. We'll start with multiple priorities. That's a pretty important thing. Sellers in your company usually have priorities which you set up for them. In most of the cases, I would say 90% plus of the cases, when you work with partners, partner sellers are they do multi-practice. They may work with your competitor's product at the same time when they work with your product. So some companies like big, for example, big system integrators, they may have a dedicated sales force for a specific practice, but I would say this is more exception rather than a rule. In most of the cases, that's a multiple priorities for the same people doing different practices. Variety of partner business models. I think yesterday, if I remember correctly, there was a person on a stage from Palo Alto Networks, Edmund probably. Edmund said that, when you work with partners, partners may have significantly different business models. They could be distributors, resellers, service partners, and all of them, to some extent, all of them are selling your product, but they are doing that in such a different manner, such a different way, using different processes, that they should be enabled in different way as well. And we need to keep that in mind while working with different types or different flavors of partners. The third, number 3, actually, there is no specific order. All of them are important. For myself, I actually highlight number 3 is one of the most important. Variety of partners' own sales processes. Partners I usually talk to, I face with, they all of them have their own sales processes. Sometimes that's a historically given thing. Sometimes it's a reflection of their own sales operation mechanisms, but they have all of them. They have unique sales processes, which in most of the cases are different than your sales process. And you need to enable their sellers on kind of like your sales process while they have their own sales processes. And what is also pretty important is that your sellers need to talk with their sellers the same language. They need to understand each other. So you need to keep that in mind, that whatever you deliver to your partners should not be egocentric, should not have your company's sales process as a center of universe. You need to understand that they have their own processes, their own entry criteria, exit criteria, artifacts, and other things. And last but not least, definitely not least, the variety of corporate cultures. Actually, this factor is usually underestimated, but it is extremely, extremely important. Some companies may have standards allowing their employees to invest a lot of time in education, in training. So some companies treat it as a real investment. It's obviously easier to work and better to work with sellers in those companies. But at the same time, there are companies, and there are plenty of them, which actually have even on the policy level. I'll give you one example. You will totally understand what I mean. Like, for example, many companies I faced, they have a 4.5 day sales customer-facing time policy. So it means that their sellers should spend at least 4.5 days per week on a customer-facing activities, and only half a day should be half a day or less should be allocated to all of the back office activities like expense reports, like opportunity management, like enablement training and enablement as well. And taking into account the point number 1, the multiple priorities. Can you imagine how to combine those things, like multiple priorities and a limited capacity, even brain capacity, because you need to fight for the mind share of your sellers, of your audience all the time. Your competitors do the same. So every time you need to do something with that. So taking all those 4 challenges into consideration, of course, there are more challenges, but I consider the remaining ones as less important. Can you imagine that you need to cover thousands or even tens of thousands of individual companies across the globe with all of those challenges at the same time and make them successful, efficient, etc. So how we approach that problem? We created framework which we call the value-driven sales enablement. I think to some extent it is pretty self-explanatory, which means that you need, every time when you are bringing a sales enablement offering to your partners, you need to bring piece of value like on another side. It's pretty self-explanatory, but how to do that in reality? Let me start with value-driven sales enablement principles we use. First of them is simplicity, simplicity, simplicity. We already covered that, like the less the better. We all have a lot of noise around us every day. I mean noise, the informational noise. And our partners have that noise as well. And you need to make sure that your offering is not 125-page playbook. Because if you create something like that, most probably it won't be read, it won't be used. You need to create something simpler, quicker, faster, more consumable, easier usable, bite-sized video, whatever is the most simple. You simplify down to the moment when you cannot simplify more. Then you think again and simplify it more, and only after that you deliver that to partners. Number 2 bullet point, the efficient external communication vehicles. That's to some extent, that's a continuation of bullet point number 1. You need to make sure that whatever you deliver to your partners is easily discoverable, is not duplicating each other, for example. And you should not use something which make your audience or partner sellers just discovering your assets like from more than 15 clicks or something like that. So efficient external communication vehicles are super important. Monetary and non-monetary incentives and benefits. That sounds obvious. Of course, if you are working with partners, you need to use incentives. You need to use benefits. Why I'm bringing it here? Actually, what we do, we try to accompany every single enablement offering with incentives to show partners and partner sellers what they will have if they invest their time in the enablement offering. Like, for example, into training and other assets for a specific product or solution, what they will get in exchange. And I'm a big fan of non-monetary incentives and benefits, because if you just pay cash for a specific behavior you want to encourage, that's great. That's probably even better on the early stage of your product or solution lifecycle, but it is not super sustainable, I would say. You need to create a mechanism which will drive, which will be like a self-driving, self-sustainable. I'll give you one example. If you are bringing, I'm making it up, a smart analytics enablement offering for smart analytics solution enablement offering to your partner sellers, and it requires them like 5 hours of their time to consume that training, read all of the supporting materials. And at the same time, you're committing to share, making the number up, 10 opportunities, 10 high-quality leads or high-quality opportunities, customer opportunities with your partner. So you're basically like you're generating business for your partner. That's a great non-monetary incentive, which all of the partners value, and we try to use that mechanism while doing what we call value-driven sales enablement. What I call smart sales enablement architecture. That is something what we are going to cover on the next slide. And last but not least, focus on sales excellence and productivity, which again sounds very familiar to you, sounds like a notorious thing, sounds like a truism, but many companies, and you know that for sure, many companies, they are more focused on advertising their products and solutions while doing sales enablement, rather than focusing on what productivity gains seller will have if they consume your offerings. Like for example, rather than just telling that a product A is such a great product, you may say that this enablement offering, the data the data we have. You'll need, every time you need to support your statements with data, the data you have says that people enable on this specific offering, they usually close deals which are 10%, I'm making numbers up, 10% bigger in terms of size. They usually have 3 percentage points higher win rates, and their deal velocity is usually 20% faster, 20% better. So they quicker and faster close their deals. So every sales leader immediately perfectly understands what would be the productivity gain for their sellers if they use your sales enablement offering. So the framework which I just talked about, what I called smart sales enablement architecture. You may say, and you may ask why this guy is calling his framework a smart sales enablement architecture. It sounds a little bit like immodest. Of course it does. But let me explain you why I say it is smart and why it makes it a little bit like unique for partners. It has two buckets, two types of offerings, so-called core offerings and rotating offerings. It's kind of like a grocery store. You come there, you see eggs, milk, bread on shelves every time because that's a core offerings. While, I don't know, barbecue grilled cheese is only in the summertime, those offerings are rotating ones. So first of all, you split your offerings into those categories. And then you bring the most important building blocks for partner success, such as, for example, strategic positioning, a portfolio knowledge, sales method. Then we have across rotating offerings, we have solution or industry sales plays, sometimes being called campaigns, and merging and acquisition offerings as well. Why it is called smart sales enablement architecture? It helps to serve, I would say, all possible configuration of sales teams, and it helps to fit any maturity of sales organizations, partner sales organizations. Let me give you an example. Let's assume you are running a Google partner sales organization, reseller, you're a reseller, and you have 100, making numbers up, 100 sales development reps, just doing like a prospecting, first contact with customers. Then you have 25 account executives, which are like who close deals, customer deals. And then you have 10 gurus, like the most mature account executives, closing complex deals, working with strategic customers or super big deals in terms of revenue. So in this case, using this example, your SDRs, your sales development reps, can just go for strategic positioning building block here, and maybe a little bit of portfolio knowledge in terms of like a core products. And that's it. That's enough for them to be efficient, to have conversations with meaningful conversation with their customers. They don't need to invest too much time in their enablement, in their training, in their education. While, for example, account executives, regular account executives, they definitely need to know how to position products or strategic positioning, portfolio knowledge, some of the sales methods, like, for example, greenfield accounts and digital native. They need to know consumption economics, and they need to know at least what sales plays are in the current portfolio, in the rotating portfolio. What are the sales plays of a quarter right now? They also don't need to consume all of the enablement offerings. At the same time, the 10 remaining gurus, account executives, they actually need to know everything. They need to understand the sales method for different segments, enterprise versus mid-market, for example. They need to understand value selling perfectly. So for them, the value selling is probably one of the main building blocks here. and they need to understand in detail every rotating sales campaign. They need to understand every sales campaign, while working with our customers. So with that, the kind of like conclusion of this slide, you have a bunch of sales enablement offerings, but you don't need to enable everybody on everything. So partners decide which pieces of the content is being consumed by different parts of their teams, and they don't need to invest and spend too much time, which is the most valuable resource for them. The last slide, the conclusion, is that you all know that win-win model. That's a conventional vendor-customer engagement rule. Like if there is no two wins, like if customer or vendor, if any of them doesn't win, then there is no sustainable and long-term success. With the indirect or channel sales or channel sales enablement, you actually need to go one level up. You need to go into another more sophisticated paradigm, which is win-win-win. Customer, partner, vendor. In this particular order, you always need to start with customers, I believe, then partner, and then vendor. And only those three wins actually can ensure the long-term success for all three parties. So with that, I think we have like 3-4 more minutes. In case if you have questions, I will try to answer them. Yes?
So for the structure that you showed on the last slide, how do you measure the effectiveness or the impact that this has on your channel?
It depends on which group of sellers we are talking about. Like, for example, if we are talking about sales development reps, covering the very entry into the sales funnel, we measure the conversion rates from leads to opportunities. That's kind of like their conversion rate. For account executives, that's a win rate, the same thing as for sales development reps, win rate of opportunities. Second thing, that's average deal size. And the third thing is deal velocity. So those three things are kind of like the main indicators for us. And now for guru account executives, that's the same as for account executives, but for their specific deals, the most complex one or the most strategic customers.
We have a question right here. I'm assuming that, so I've been in the partner role for my entire career. This is the first time I've actually done sales enablement and partner enablement. So I'm seeing the transition. Transition of information is always difficult, right? To go from sales to partner in the sense that we don't have the same tools on the partner side as we do on the sales side. So with that being said, how the limitations that we have, how much is this tied to your partner program and what you offer versus just giving it to all your partners?
That's, honestly speaking, that's the most painful moment, what you describe, and it seems that you know everything about that. Yeah, that's the most difficult thing. I can tell you what is just my guesstimate on that, because I never was able to precisely measure what is being used like for partners versus like your direct sales force. I'd say it is about 80% of what direct sellers use, and I only exclude the most sensitive things, the sensitive data-driven tools, which are not shareable at all, and a little bit of competitive intelligence as well. So not everything, like for example, the judgmental competitive intelligence is not shareable, which sometimes partner sellers are not happy with, but you cannot tell outside of your organization that something is nicer, looking better, because it's all your judgments. But you can say that, oh, it is 17% faster than competitive product, compute engine, for example, and then you also bring proof link from the competitor's website and from your website, why it makes it 17% faster, but non-judgmental things.
All right. And that is it for our questions. We've got a second to spare. Oh, okay. Time's up. Thank you so much, Oleg. Thank you so much, Oleg.